Hi everyone, I'm Gertie and welcome to a new month in our Hollywood Icons theme on Patreon. This month, I'm so excited we're going to be celebrating Grace Kelly, a style icon, with the Lisa Bodice. And this bodice is inspired by Grace Kelly's character in the Hitchcock film Rear Window. And one of the most recognizable dresses of this period, I think, is the Edith Head designed dress that Grace Kelly wears in this film with the black bodice and that gorgeous white tulle skirt with black appliques. So we're bringing you the bodice this month. And if you're in one of our bonus tiers, we'll be showing you how to recreate that gorgeous floaty circle skirt with all the layers and the appliques in our magazine, which releases on the 15th of this month. So let's talk about the bodice now, which is what we're going to be showing you how to sew today. So this is a fully lined bodice with slightly off the shoulder raglan cap sleeves. It has a kind of modest V in the front and then a deep V in the back. And it's closely fitted and shaped with darts. And I'm excited about one of the skills we're going to teach you today, which is using clear elastic to ease in that sleeve cap and keep it gripping closely to your shoulders. So if you've ever had problems with this style of sleeve slipping off your shoulders, this is a trick I want you to pay attention to. And it's related to the twill tape skill that we showed you last month, this time with elastic. And this bodice is super versatile because you can use it with any of our bottoms in the Lamour series. So you'll see one of the samples that we made has the sarong skirt from the Lamour dress. And of course, there's so many other options you can choose, including like a romper with the Loretta shorts. And I hope you'll join me for the Crowdcast later this month because I'm going to be talking more about the history behind this design, including all about Grace Kelly's collaborations with Alfred Hitchcock, and of course with Edith Head, who is the most famous costume designer of this period of Hollywood history. So let's get started talking about, we're going to start talking about pattern pieces, and then we will get into fabric and supplies. Okay, so now we're ready to talk pattern pieces. So as always, we have shrunk these down to 25% so that you can see them together on the table here. Amazing news, there's only 3 pieces in this pattern. And it's fairly simple. So you have your bodice front, which is cut on the fold. And I want you to take a look at these circles. We kind of ran into this last month with Sabrina. So we have a curved cutout dart at the waist, and that has a circle for the dart point. Now, right above that is another circle. And the higher circle here is for the bust apex, which we are now marking in on all of our patterns, just for your fit reference. So you'll know the difference because the bust apex mark always has a cross through it. We have your bust dart and a notch for your sleeve, and then a circle for where you're going to be pivoting at the center front V to get a nice crisp neckline. So you're going to be cutting 1 fabric on fold and 1 lining on fold for the bodice front. And for the bodice back, you're going to be cutting 2 fabric, 2 lining. Again, you have a dart, got some notches to mark. We are going to be stabilizing the center back and the back V and the center front V. So keep that in mind when you go to use your stay tape, your fusible stay tape. And then the third pattern piece is your raglan sleeve. So we have our usual sleeve notches on here. And one thing that's a little bit unusual is that it has a dart at the shoulder point. And this upper edge is where we're going to be easing that clear elastic into to get it to really hug your shoulder. So you're going to cut 2 fabric and 2 lining for the sleeve. All right, so next we're going to talk fabric and supplies. Okay, so we're ready to talk about fabric and supplies now. So as always, you can find the full list of fabric recommendations in the instructions. I'm just going to be giving you a few of my favorite recommendations today. So you'll notice that these are very similar to the fabrics that we recommended last month for the Sabrina bodice. So if you have some left over, this would be a great project to use it for, especially since it doesn't require a lot of yardage. So what we're calling for is light to medium medium weight wovens. Okay, so this is not a project for knits, but you could use a woven with a little bit of spandex blended in for comfort and wearing ease. So here are some of my suggestions. Of course, you know, since we're doing the iconic rear window dress, I have to mention black velvet first for your bodice. So this is a cotton velveteen. This is my favorite type of velvet to sew with because it's pretty sturdy, it doesn't slip around a lot, and it's easy to sew. Another great choice would be cotton sateen, either with or without lycra blended in. Another great choice for this dress would be wool crepe or any other wool suiting to make like a really classic sheath dress. I think would be beautiful. I love the idea of eyelet for this dress. You would want to line the entire thing, of course, but this is a black linen eyelet. I think this would be gorgeous for this dress, especially with a full skirt. This is a fabric that we use for one of the samples, and it's a Liberty of London wool and cotton blend challis, which is a little bit unusual, and it's so beautiful to work with. And I've never worked with it before, but it really did turn out beautifully. So any sort of wool challis would be beautiful. Something like a Liberty of London Tana lawn would be really pretty too, or any lightweight cotton like this. So think about going into the warmer months. This would create a beautiful summer dress with a full skirt and a lightweight cotton. You're going to need some fabric for your lining, of course. So for a sort of upscale lining, you could do a silk charmeuse, or for these cottons, a great choice is a cotton voile. Or you could do a specific lining fabric like a rayon Bemberg. Okay, what else do we need? You are going to need your 14-inch regular zipper, your 1.25 inch wide fusible stay tape. You're going to need a little more than usual because we're going to be stabilizing our zipper opening as well as the front and back V necklines. You're going to need your 1/4 inch wide clear elastic, 1/2 yard of this for those sleeve caps. You're going to need needles, and we recommend Microtex. It's a great match for all of these fabrics. And then, of course, all-purpose polyester thread to match your fabric. Okay, so we're ready to get started sewing. Okay, here we are, and guess what, everyone? It's me, Gertie. I'm sewing for you again, and I'm so happy to be back on camera with you all and sewing the Lisa Bodice with you today. So we're going to start with talking about what we've done pre-recording, right? Which is to do stay stitching on the neckline at 1/2 inch, and you're going to go in from shoulder to center front, shoulder to center front. And then you're going to want to double up on the reinforcement on this neckline because it's on the bias. We really don't want it to stretch out when you're wearing it, of course, or sewing it. So I added some strips of fusible interfacing here. These are the 1.25 inch wide stay tape strips that we use to stabilize our zipper opening as well, but you can use it here. You can also just cut those strips of fusible interfacing from your yardage. That's totally fine. So I've done that to the bodice front. I want to show you what I did to the bodice back. So it's the same thing on the neckline. Stay stitching from the armhole to center back. Add the stay tape. Then add stay tape to your center back for your zipper opening. Okay, so those are all the things you're going to need to do to prepare. And the first thing we're going to be doing is sewing darts. So we have 2 darts on the back. On our front, we have 2 bust darts, and then we have these curved waist darts. And then we also have darts on the sleeves. Keep this in mind, okay? We have this raglan sleeve with a dart, which helps it grip to the shoulder. Okay, so we're gonna be sewing all of these darts. I am going to start with working on one of these bust darts. So you can see this fabulous fabric. I love this like 60s bedspread vibe we have here. And I'm just gonna show you one dart. I know you all know how to sew darts at this point. So let's sew one of these regular straight darts. So you're gonna fold it in half, right sides together. I always put a pin right at the point. And then I do clips on my legs. So you're gonna match your clips. And then you're going to pin up the leg of the dart. And you can see the dart is marked in a sort of navy blue wax paper. I love this wax paper. You can buy it on Susan Calgi's website, by the way. The only problem is it never washes out, okay? So make sure it's something that will blend in and it's on the wrong side of your fabric. Okay, so here's one pinned. We're gonna go to the sewing machine and sew from the edge of the fabric to the 2.5 millimeters long. I'm gonna start at the edge. I'm gonna make sure I'm centered here, okay. And I'm gonna back stitch. You guys have no idea how hard it is to sew with a camera in front of you, between you and your sewing machine. So just taking a moment to appreciate Andrea and Kristen who have been doing this. And just to note that Kristen has left Charm. I'm very happy for her. She has gone on to a job working in the ready-to-wear fashion industry. And that's what she's wanted. That's been her long-term goal. So we're very happy for her, but of course we'll miss her on camera. Okay, so I'm sewing to the point of the dart, and then when I get to the end, I like to do my last couple stitches like right parallel to the edge here, and then go off. And then we're gonna trim our threads. So you're gonna leave yourself a couple inches. And make sure my iron is on. And I'm gonna tie off these threads. Darts without talking about pressing. So grab your cat ham. And let's see, we're gonna trim these threads down. So you're gonna wanna get this on the dart to where it's nice and smooth, where you're not seeing any puckers. So you can just kind of manipulate it on your dart to where it lays flat. You might have to try a couple times to get it in the right position. And hopefully my iron is heated up. Let's see. Ooh, it's nice and heated up. Okay, and when you get to the point, I want you to really take some time here. Oops, that's the squirty thing. I just sprayed water all over the table. Okay, so see how I'm like kind of almost pulling it taut over. Oh my God, I forgot which button is the spray and which is the steam. Okay, the left is the steam, everyone. Okay, so I see how nice and flat it is around the point there. So I'm gonna look at it from the front. I'm feeling happy with it, though if I wanted to do a little bit more here, I could. From the front. Okay, so there's one straight dart down, all right? So off camera, I'm gonna do the rest of them, the other bust dart, the 2 on the back, and the 2 on the sleeves. And then next we'll come back and I'll show you how to do one of these curved darts. Okay, so we are back. I've sewn all these many darts, and I wanted to mention that you're gonna do the same thing with your lining pieces. So just repeat that whole process that you did for your fabric on your lining pieces. I'm using this really, it's so thin, this voile, but it was very economical. So that's gonna be the lining. I just repeated the process for all of those pieces. And then I wanted to just do a separate little chapter on these curved waist darts. So at Charm, whenever we do a curved dart, we cut out the bulk of the dart, the center of the dart. It just makes it a little bit easier to sew a curved dart that way. So you can see you still want to mark in the dart stitching lines, but I find these a little bit easier to sew because you have your seam allowance to go by, right? So you can sew at your regular 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. But again, we're just going to pin at the point here and match up the dart lengths. There we go. And then, you know, you can, just like we did on the other dart legs, you know, check, you know, be real precise. But the thing is, if you cut accurately and these edges are aligned and then you stitch at 5/8 of an inch, you're good till about here. And then you're gonna want that guide, that stitching line marked really well. Okay, so back stitching. Following that marked line. And you just want to pay extra attention when you get close to the tip here, to the point of the dart. And then, yeah, just really, I mean, what I advise everyone not to do is like go on a sharp angle off the fabric here. So instead, even though the dart may be marked that way, do your last couple stitches almost like parallel to the edge here, okay? And we're gonna tie off those threads. And the thing that's different about these curved waist darts with pressing is that we're gonna press them open, which I always like that because it helps get rid of a little bulk in the dart. But in order to be able to press it open, you're going to need to put your scissors in here, and this may be a little scary, but it's okay, don't worry. Put your scissors in here and trim, or I'm sorry, slash up to the point of the dart here. Don't cut into your stitching, obviously, but this is going to let you press this dart open. Okay. All right, so now we are going to start at the waist. And then when you get close to the point, these are, you know, this bodice has like a lot of shape built into it, just like Edith Head would have done, of course. You know, we want to get that Grace Kelly, beautiful darted shape. So there's a lot of curve on these bust darts. And of course, the higher you go in cup sizes, the more curve you're going to have there. So take your time here. I always like to use a little steam if you can at the point. You guys impressed? I'm already learning which button is the steam button. Second seam in, just like old times. Okay, so go from the right side. All right, so you can see how much volume is being built into the bust here. So it's going to look amazing. All right, so I'm gonna finish this dart off camera, same thing as the other one, and then we'll come back for next steps. Okay, so we're back. Here is all of my front darts sewn, looking nice and curvy. And the next thing we're gonna do is sew our side seams. And I just wanna point out, one thing I love about how this bodice comes together is that the neckline shape looks a little sketchy, right, when it's cut out. But now you can see, now that darts are sewn, it's starting to form that sort of beautiful open V-neck that we love for this design. Okay, so next thing we're gonna do is we are going to take our bodice backs and pin it right sides together with the bodice front. So you have a notch on the bodice back side seam, and that matches your dart on the front. And so you just want to make sure that everything is aligned on that side seam, the dart, the fold of the dart, and all that. And now we're going to pin, fill in pins. I'm going to go to my waist. Make sure you're matching at that 5/8 of an inch seam line. If you're not, just smooth it out, try again. Okay, looks good. All right, so I have my pins. Now we're gonna sew at 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so now we're going to press this seam allowance open. And you may notice that there are no finished seam allowances on this bodice, and that's because it's going to be fully lined, right? So anytime there's a fully lined bodice, everything is fully enclosed, so we don't really worry about finishing those seam allowances. Okay, and now because this, see how there's a little bit of a curve to this seam from the bust? That's why I'm using the ham right now. Okay, so you're going to press those open. Looking beautiful. Off camera, I'm gonna do the same thing with the other side seam, and then we're gonna come back for sleeves. Okay, so bodice is sewn, side seams are sewn. Now the next thing we're gonna do is focus on the sleeves. So you can see with the dart sewn in the sleeve cap, you're getting a nice amount of shape here. This is gonna go over your shoulder. So think of this almost like a shoulder seam, right? And we are also going to put that clear elastic in this seam allowance to get it to really hug close to the body, which is such a game changer with a dress like this where it may otherwise keep slipping off your shoulders. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, which I've already done on one sleeve, is sew the underarm seam. It's like not even 2 inches of stitching. Right sides together. This is so fun to be sewing with you all again. I've really missed this, and it's just been so busy with writing books and everything else going on that I haven't been able to do this as much as I would have liked. So it's fun to be back. All right, so now we're going to stitch at 5/8 of an inch. Okay, tiniest seam ever. We're gonna press it open. And I'm just gonna go right on to the next step, which is sewing the sleeve into the bodice. So this is a raglan sleeve, which looks a little different, right, than a regular set-in sleeve. You wanna be looking for your notches, right? The first single notch means it's the front of the sleeve, and the double notch means it's the back. So let's grab our bodice as constructed. And that's how I know which sleeve is which. So I'm not going to accidentally set it in backwards. All right, so the first thing you're gonna do is match up at the underarm. And pin there. And you can put a couple pins in the seam allowances too, just so that they stay pressed open as you stitch. Then you're going to match your front notch, fill in pins. Oops, I accidentally pinned part of the bodice. You don't want that. So I want you all to know that this fabric also comes in pink, which I didn't realize. I bought this at my local fabric store, Beadle and Fred, and it was actually on a retreat weekend when we do a little fabric shopping party, which is always really fun. And I bought this, so maybe you were there. Maybe you remember me buying it. And I just love the like 60s-ness of all of this. But then I went online because I was curious if they have it in a rayon too. This is a quilting cotton, so it's great for like full skirts, structured bodices, you know, which is exactly what we're doing here. But I thought it would be really nice in a rayon for a drapier garment. But it's Ruby Star Society, which is such a great quilting cotton company. But unfortunately, they only made it in quilting cotton, which it's fine. It's gonna be cute, but I definitely need to get some of the pink. All right, so you can see I've pinned around the whole sleeve. See how it's gonna come together. And now I'm gonna work from the inside of the sleeve. All right, so we're 5/8 of an inch, starting at the edge of our fabric. This sort of raglan off the shoulder sculpted bodice is it's such a common sort of, recurring design that you would see in the 50s especially. So when I was looking at the lines of this dress that Grace Kelly wears in the movie Rear Window, I really felt like it had, of course, it's so iconic in the black velvet with the tulle skirt with the appliques. I actually think her skirt was organza, just to be specific here. But what I loved about it is that I could see just how versatile it would be. You could make it in a quilting cotton for a summer dress. You could make it, and I wanted it to be in the Lamour series because you have so many skirt options then. And I made a version which you can see in the photo shoot, which is in a sort of like tropical Liberty wool and cotton challis with the Lamour sarong skirt and with the matching Dorothy bolero, and it has a totally different vibe. I actually wore it in Palm Springs when I was on vacation there recently, which is like one of my favorite places on earth. And it was so perfect, but you could also do, you know, you can make it in velvet for, you know, a more formal evening dress. You can make it in quilting cotton for a day dress. So versatile. Okay, so look at that. I have one sleeve on. I'm gonna put that to the side. I'm gonna focus on how to press this sleeve. Okay, so again, we're not worrying about seam finishing. If we were, I would serge these seam allowances together down to like, you know, 3/8 of an inch. But since we are fully lining this bodice, what we're gonna do is just clip every 1/2 an inch. And you know, normally I say clip all the way up to the stitching. I'm feeling like a little more cautious than I normally do. I'm normally such a, yeah, cut all the way up, it'll be fine. But with this kind of bodice, you do, you know, you get a lot of wear under the arm. So if you're concerned about that, you can even go back and do another line of stitching around the underarm or finish your seam allowances as one. But the way I'm going to show you today is to press them open, clip and press open, which gives you a little bit of a crisper seam line. So it's just all about what you're looking for in your dress, what kind of fabric you're using. You know what I want now is a cat seam roll rather than a cat ham. So you're just gonna have to, you know, move around and continually readjust where the bodice is on the seam roll to be able to get into this seam allowance here. Okay, so now I have pressed this open as best I can. Let me go back and fix this. And then I'm just gonna make sure that I didn't accidentally put any creases around the sleeve, which is easy to do in those tight little spots when you're pressing open. Just press the sleeve. Okay, so there is one sleeve set in. I'm going to do the same thing. Oof. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side, and then we'll come back for next steps. Okay, everyone, good morning. It's a new day in the workroom for me. Maybe not for you, but through the magic of cinema, we are now in the next day here, and we're gonna move to the next step. Okay, so I have fully completed my outer bodice, sleeves are on, and my lining. So you can see how sheer this lining is. This is this wall from Fabric Wholesale Direct, which is very, very cheap, but be warned, it's very sheer, which will be nice for summer. I'm just planning on it being warm someday. Again, it's 12 degrees here currently in New York, so we are suffering. Okay, what we're gonna do now, right sides together. And I want you to pin at your key points here. So your raglan seams, you've got your darts matching. Did I tell you all to press your sleeve darts towards the back? I don't think I did. Okay, so if you're not sure, you could also press one to either direction if your fabric is a little bit heavier and you don't want any bulk there. So keep that in mind. But I'm using, obviously, I keep talking, I keep complaining about how thin this wall is. So you know I'm not using heavy fabric. So I press both of mine towards the back. All right, so it looks like my voile stretched out a little bit. So I'm just gonna spend a little extra time pinning here. You can stabilize your lining too, of course. We generally don't put it in the instructions because we just have you like match the two together, right? But this is on the bias. So if you want to do some stay stitching, put a line of stay tape, you know, fusible, 1¼ wide fusible in your lining neckline, please, by all means. Okay, keep pinning all the way around. And our next step is going to be to prepare for the clean finish neckline. So I'm just showing you the construction of the bodice today. We're not going to put a skirt on. We're just doing the bodice. So I'm preparing it as though I'm going to put on a skirt. I think I'm going to put the boardwalk skirt or a gathered skirt on here. I have not decided yet, but I need to prepare it for a lap zipper. You can use whatever bottom in the Lamour series you want. You could make this a little crop top by finishing the bottom edges. The world is your oyster. Okay, so now, oh my gosh. If you have been a patron or you've been following me for a long time, since the dark ages, then you know that this is one of my favorite methods, and I teach this all the time, which is how to do the clean finish of the center back neckline. And you've seen Kristen and Andrea do it many times too. But if you're new to it, this is a method that I like for ensuring that you get a nice, neat, professional finish at the upper edge of your neckline in preparation for a lapped zipper, right? Because it can sometimes get a little bit sketchy up there with a lap zipper, because then you have to kind of turn in the seam allowance is weird and you feel like, doesn't look very good. All right, so on the right side, this is the underlap side of my zipper, my lapped zipper. We're gonna turn both of these seam allowances towards you. Now keep in mind, I am working from the lining side up, wrong side facing up. I'm gonna fold these both together 1/2 inch. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of finger press them and put a pin there. All right, and then from on the overlap side, which is the left side, I'm gonna fold them separately. The lining is going to get folded in 7/8 of an inch. I'm using this handy little seam gauge for this. Okay, so that one goes in 7/8 of an inch. I'm gonna pin it on its own. And then I'm going to turn the dress itself, this seam allowance will go 5/8 of an inch. Okay, so 2 different amounts. I'm finger pressing here, just kind of holding that down. All right, and so what we're looking for here, I like to look down here and make sure I'm seeing a 1/4 inch difference between the two, right? And that's what I'm seeing. So that's gonna give us a nice clean finish at the upper edge of the zipper. And now we're ready to sew the neckline. We are sewing at 5/8 of an inch. You're gonna keep that folded down and make sure you stitch all the way to the edge and backstitch. Okay. So I'm going to stitch all the way around this neckline. Here we go. And the only thing to really note about this neckline is your center front point. Okay, you want to be very deliberate. And actually, you know what? I'm gonna take a moment and just go back in and mark my center front point. See, even if you forgot, like me, you can do it mid-seam. All right, so what I like to do is just like, make sure I have 5/8 of an inch marked on each side. All right, maybe we'll cut this part out. More cinema magic. You won't even know that I forgot to do this, but I know you guys like to see me mess up, so here we go, here we go. Okay, so now I'm coming up to my center front point. I'm gonna follow my stitching lines rather than my seam allowance guide on the throat plate. Stop with my needle down and pivot. And there we go. I'm just gonna keep sewing all the way around until I get to the other opposite side of the neckline with those folded in seam allowances. Okay, now one thing I want to do here is just go back and reinforce my stitching at center front. I know in the instructions it says to just change your stitch length to 1 millimeter when you get close to center front, and that's a good way to do it too. But now you see I'm working from the bodice side, and I'm just going over my previous stitching with 1 millimeter stitch length. Just about an inch to either side of the center front. So now we're going to grade our seam allowances. So we can start with the lining facing up, and I'm going to clip across center back diagonally to get rid of that bulk. And then your lining is going to be the shorter seam allowance. So I'm going to trim this down to about 1/4 inch, a little less is fine too. All right, and when I get to center front, to this pivot point, I am going to clip into the seam allowances together up to your stitching. Okay, now I'm gonna finish grading the lining. Okay, and then at the other center back, I'm gonna clip diagonally again. And now we need to do the dress seam allowance, the bodice seam allowance. So that one can be about 1/8 of an inch taller than your previous. So it's about 3/8 of an inch, scant 3/8 of an inch. Oh my gosh, this one's so much easier to cut. That wall is really hard to cut. It's so flimsy. In my ongoing campaign against this wall, my numerous complaints. Maybe you guys will love it. Okay, so now here I am at center front. Continue around the other side. And this seam allowance is where we're going to apply that clear elastic in the next chapter, just to hug that sleeve close to your body. When we did the first fittings of this bodice, you know, the sleeve really stood away from the arm, and we could not figure out how we were going to get it to lay the way we wanted it to. And then clear elastic in the seam allowance. We've been sewing a lot of knits recently and using a lot of clear elastic. So ended up just putting a little in that seam allowance, and it works really well. Okay, so this is an outer seam allowance. You could do an outer curve. You could do a few notches here if you wanted. We don't have any inner curves on this neckline like we normally do. So remember, you always clip your inner curves and notch your outer curves. Do you love how messy my graded seam allowances are? You know, the important thing about grading is that you do it. It doesn't have to look perfect. These 3 steps, you know, I always talk about, you know, grading, clipping / notching, and then understitching. They're all, you know, those 3 steps go hand in hand. So you want to make sure to always be completing each of those steps every time. Okay, everyone, so we have our graded neckline. We've done some notches. We've clipped diagonally at center back, clipped at center front, and now we're ready to move on to next steps. Okay, it's time. It's time to do the clear elastic. Very excited about this. Okay, so we're going to be working with the lining side up, and we're going to be focusing on this area on the raglan sleeves between the raglan seams. Okay, so just this curved edge right here. And you're going to grab your clear elastic we're using quarter wide. If you only have 3/8 or whatever, you know, that's fine. Don't stress. But what we're gonna be doing is we're going to be sewing this clear elastic, oh my gosh, you can't even see it, it's so clear, to the seam allowances, and just, you're not gonna stretch it per se, but you are gonna hold it taut as you're stitching. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, you can have a little excess, but we're just gonna be stitching between these seam allowances. And actually, I'm gonna start right at the seam just to reinforce it a little bit, okay? So I'm just pinning at the beginning, and then you don't wanna pin the whole thing because part of this application is just holding it taut as you're sewing. So you don't wanna like pin the whole thing first, okay? Alrighty. And I'm going back to my regular 2.5 stitch length. And you want to stitch just inside the line of stitching that you just did, okay? So don't stitch on your seam line, but you can stitch next to it. All right, so I'm just getting started on my clear elastic. And I'm holding, okay, see, this would be stretching, right? Hopefully you can see this. This would be stretching. And that would be, you know, maybe if you were trying to gather it up a little bit, you would do that. This is more like taut, okay? So hold this taut, and then use your left hand to feed the garment through as you normally would, holding the elastic taut here. So I'm kind of stitching down the center of this elastic. And see how it's just kind of slightly easing it up where I've stitched here. Isn't this cool? Are you so excited? I love this technique. I love when we find these little things that just make all the difference in how a garment looks on the body, how it behaves, how it's doing what I wanted the design to do. That's always really exciting. Okay, so I got to my opposite raglan seam and then I backstitched. Okay, so there is one side applied. You can see how it's just slightly eased up here. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna trim any elastic from the ends, and I'm gonna go and do the other sleeve. One thing I wanna say before I do that though is, if you are nervous about any of these seams splitting open, by all means, like this, you know, now that we've trimmed down the seam allowances, anytime you grade and then you're worried about this, just go back and reinforce there. Just go back over it, okay? Actually, I'm gonna do that right now. You know, you could try to count on the elastic stitching to reinforce it, but you know, if you wanna be a little more cautious, which apparently I'm less of a risk taker these days, I'm gonna go back and reinforce there. All right, so you can see I've got clear elastic applied on both sides. It's eased up nicely so that it will hug the shoulder. And now what we're gonna do is understitch. So at the center backs, trim my threads here. I'm gonna turn these right sides out, like that. And at the other center back. So again, if you're new to the clean finish method that we do here at Charm, what you'll see here is at the overlap side, you're gonna get this nice staggered bodice and lining seam allowance, and then your zipper tape is gonna be sandwiched in there. So you're gonna get a nice clean finish here, rather than them having ended flush here and then having one kind of be really awkward on top of the other. We don't want anything to be awkward. That would be terrible. Okay, so now we're gonna understitch. So we are going to go to the underlap center back, and before you start understitching with this clean finish method, you need to do a little clip into the seam allowances so that you are able to press the seam allowances with your hand towards the lining. Okay, one benefit of the sheer lining is I think you're gonna be able to see where my seam allowances are, right? They're all underneath the lining. Okay, and then I need to do the same thing on the other side. Just do a little clip in the seam allowances next to your turned in clean finish at the back. And that's gonna let you turn the seam allowances the way you need to when you're understitching. All right, so let's go to the machine. We're gonna understitch and regular stitch length. just right next to that seam line, you can use, you know, an edge stitching foot, blind hem foot. I'm being wild and eyeballing it. And what I'm doing is making sure that those seam allowances are underneath my lining, and then I'm holding the two sides taut away from each other. It's going to feel a little different when you get to your sleeve. Why? Because you've got your clear elastic in there. So you're just going to be understitching over your clear elastic, so you'll feel, you may need to like hold the seam allowances a little more taut, and you can see my presser foot just wanted to get stuck on it. I'm going to keep going all the way around the neckline. I want you to stick with me because we're going to go to the center front. We may need to break our stitching there, but we will see. You know, getting a nice clean point is at the center front is such a big part of this design. So you can break your stitching here and come back on the other side. The other thing you can do is do a sort of pivot at your center front. So let's do that. We're going to understitch all the way to center front, stop with our needle down, lift up the presser foot, and then see how I'm just kind of moving all of the excess out of the way. And now continuing on the other side of that pivot point. That was definitely a risky move. I may regret that. We'll see. Because I may have a little pucker there. Yeah, so I might go back and fix that. But you know, gotta take risks, some risks in life. All right, I'm gonna keep going all the way around, and then we will move on to pressing this. All right, and the next step after understitching is always pressing. You're going to turn the lining to the inside and then just use your fingers to roll out here. And then take your iron and press the edge. Great spot for a little steam. And you may want to just use a little caution around here because clear elastic does melt, but we have our lining layer over it, so I'm not too worried. It's almost like the lining is a press cloth for us here. Okay, and see how it's just subtly gathered, it's just subtly eased up, and that elastic is gonna help it hug nicely to the arm. All right, so I'm gonna continue with my understitching. My pressing. I'm gonna look at the center front. I wanna make sure that it looks nice and clean. I don't wanna see any lining at that center front. I think I might be okay here. All right, so I'm gonna continue all the way around, and then we'll come back for the next step. All right, we are back. So what we're gonna talk about in this scene is doing a bagged lining on the sleeve hem. I already did one because quite frankly, I needed to make sure that I was able to do it. If you look at the instructions, you'll see there's a note that bagging the lining is a really cool step, and it lets you do this whole thing by machine, but it's a really tight area. Look at this little sleeve inseam, I guess we'll call it. It's like an inch, okay? So you have to get through a really tight area. So what I would recommend is that you pin it first on your sleeve and test it. But you may, if you find you can't get in there, what you may need to do is start over and do this sleeve lining by hand, stitch it by hand. So the way you would do that is you would turn up each seam allowance 5/8 of an inch, the outer bodice, and then the lining turn up 5/8 of an inch, and then you would put them together and slip stitch all the way around. Okay, so that would be the hand finish method. Just clean this off. Okay, that would be the hand finish method, but we're gonna do bagging the lining, which always makes me nervous, but it's always so satisfying when you get it. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. we are going to reach between the two layers, the lining and the bodice. And you're going to grab that little underarm seam on the sleeve. And we're going to be putting these right sides together. So now I'm going to flip it to the inside, and I'm going to start at the underarm seam. Okay, right sides together from the inside. It's a little bit of a brain teaser. Give it a try. It's hard to explain in writing. It's hard to show, but I feel like once you try it, you may be really excited by this method. And see, what is weird about this is that now, see how I'm getting to this sort of like tight area? You have to keep kind of like pulling the sleeve out and sort of isolating those seam allowances and going all the way around. So I'm just going to keep pinning right sides together around the lower edge of the sleeve. I love these little tiny raglan sleeves. These actually remind me of a design by Peggy Wood, which this is a real deep dive into Gertie lore. One of my first patterns for Butterick, Patterns by Gertie, was a design inspired by Peggy Wood. And she had these sort of like crisscross bodices with like surplice bodices with pleats and these tiny little raglan sleeves. And I think ever since then, I've just like really loved these tiny sleeves. I'm gonna go the other way now. So starting back at the underarm, continuing around. And Peggy Wood was one of these designers that sold to the resorts in Hawaii. So she had, you know, a lot of beautiful tropical prints. She also had some like really gorgeous abstract prints. Will you guys do me a favor and just like Google Peggy Wood dresses right now? I'll talk about them in the crowdcast too, but you know, if you feel like you need a break, go to Google and type in Peggy Wood dress. And hopefully you'll see what I'm talking about. There's one that I hope it's not the only one left on this planet because it was sold a few years ago and it's like this red abstract print, like sort of painterly print. I'm so into it. Okay. All right, so while I've been talking about Peggy Wood, you'll see I've pinned all the way around. And it's weird because there's sort of like an infinity loop in here. All right, so now we're gonna go to the machine and we're gonna stitch all the way around. And I'm gonna start at the underarm. All right, so we're stitching. I mean, the thing to remember is you just need to keep readjusting it. So as you stitch, you're gonna feel like you're getting to the end of what you can stitch, but what you need to do is keep pulling out from that little infinity loop area. Okay, so keep pulling it out as you go. So hopefully you're able to do this. I think, you know, I usually use the industrial at the studio, and that's a flatbed. So I think I would even be able to do this on that because you don't need to use your free arm. We're just stitching on a flat surface here. So I want to know if you guys did this step this way. So please tell me in the comments. I would love to hear how you found this bagging method. Also, you can lengthen this sleeve. I know a lot of you prefer longer sleeves. There's no reason that you can't just lengthen those underarm seams to the length that you want. So 3/4 would look really cute. I would test it first. I know I always say this, but test it first just to make sure, because you want to make sure that you like the circumference of the sleeve, that it's fitting correctly. You may want to take it in a little bit. And look, while I've been rambling, we're almost to the beginning of it. I met up with my previous stitching. All right, so see how crazy this looks right now? Now we're just gonna turn it right side out. You can trim these seam allowances down, you can grade them, the sleeve hem, but you know, I don't think it's totally necessary, especially for this thinner fabric. Okay, moment of truth, the big reveal. The big reveal, as we would say on Drag Race. Are you guys watching season 17? I am very into it. Okay, the big reveal is that we have a clean finish hem. And you want to spend some time pressing this. What's important is you don't want this collapsed seam line here. We can't understitch this. That would be a nightmare. So we are just going to roll this seam line out to the edge as much as possible. You need to just use your fingertips to do that. And I like to use a raised surface. There's a lot of good TV on right now. So I think I've talked about this already in a crowdcast, but I'm so into The Traitors, which is that reality TV show hosted by Alan Cumming. I know it's really huge in the UK, so if you're British, you're probably already on The Traitors, but there's a new US season, season 3, and Bob the Drag Queen was on it. Gabby Windy, who I really like from The Bachelorette. I'm not really a Bachelorette person, but I saw her on Dancing with the Stars and really loved it. And then there's RuPaul's Drag Race season 17. And then The White Lotus season 3 just started. So I'm, you know, I have plenty to watch while I'm kind of hibernating. Me and Millie. Millie's here with me, by the way. She's on the shag. She's blending into the shag rug. Okay. So see how nice that looks? Peggy would be so proud. All right, so the last thing we're gonna do in this step is we're going to stitch in the ditch at the underarm just to keep these layers together, right? Because there's nothing holding the lining in place here, so it's nice to have something just like tacking it in place at the underarm. All right, so this is a stitch in the ditch. We are working from the right side. And you want, very important that your stitching be right in that seam line. Just that little short, tiny 1-inch tops underarm seam. Okay, so now I have that secured and we are ready to move on to finishing steps. All right, everyone, so these are final steps here. What we're gonna do is we are going to prepare the lining for finishing, okay? So after this video, what you're gonna do is you're gonna sew your chosen Lamour bottom, and then you're going to attach it at the waistline, and then you're gonna do your zipper, and you're gonna do all your finishing, like slip stitching your lining, okay, to the waistline and to the zipper tape here. Okay, but what I like to do to prepare for that on the lining is we're going to stay stitch at 1/2 inch. So I feel like I didn't truly get to give my pitch for The Traitors, which is that it's hosted by Alan Cumming, which should be enough of a pitch as it is, but it's set in a castle in the Scottish Highlands. I think it's the Highlands anyway. And there's a lot of tartan, and there's really like fabulous fashion, and it's very campy. Lots of like manufactured, like mysterious drama. And it's just really, it's fun. And Alan Cumming has a dog named Lala who dresses up in coordinating outfits with Alan, and Alan's outfits are just fabulous. Like not just tartan, but like sequins, berets, spiked ties, jodhpurs, I don't know, just like cloaks, you know, just like he goes for it, you know. It's really a fabulous show. So let me know in the comments if you're watching. I want to know how you all like it. I will say I'm like really not into the challenges where there's like insects and, you know, you're getting trapped in a coffin. Like I'm highly claustrophobic. I don't like watching stuff like that, but you know, you can just fast forward and just do the fashion. Anyway, what I'm doing now is I am clipping into just like between the front dart and the back dart. So this is a step that's really important because the next thing we're going to do is we're going to press up the seam allowance. And the thing that I think people don't think a lot about with waistlines and fit is that the waist is circular, right? It's a round seam going around the circumference of your body. And so think about a circle and the circumference. If you add 5/8 to the inside, 5/8 of an inch to the inside of that circle, you're making the circumference much smaller, right? So you need to do something. You need to trim. Oh, what am I doing? Oh my God. I got so passionate about the circumference of the waistline that I just went rogue there. Okay, I'm pressing this in. You're changing the fit of the waistline so much if you don't somehow trim down those seam allowances or press in or clip in. So keep that in mind. You always want to do, and especially when you're making muslins, you know, make sure you're clipping into your waistline seam because you might think it's too tight when really it's not, you know, once you clip. Okay. So everyone, we've come to the end of this Traders podcast. And this is your completed bodice. So like I said, next thing you're going to do, you are going to sew on your bottom, whether that's a skirt or a pair of shorts. That would be really cute. Maybe a pair of pants. I don't know what your plans are, but I can't wait to see. You're going to sew at the waistline. You're going to insert your zipper. You're going to do all the finishing you need to do, like hand stitching the lining around the zipper tape, around the waistline, and then your hems. All right. It's been so fun sewing with you all again. I can't wait to connect with you later in the month on the Crowdcast and talk all things Grace Kelly, Rear Window, Hitchcock, etc. All right, so that is it, your Lisa Bodice. I hope you've loved sewing along with us today. I can't wait to see what you make with this. Like I said, it's so versatile. There's so many different combinations you can do. Don't forget to check out our article in the magazine this month about how to recreate the iconic Rear Window skirt. And of course, please join me for the Crowdcast as well, where we'll be talking about all things Grace Kelly, Alfred Hitchcock, and Edith Head. So I hope to see you there. Goodbye.